listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Here's the thing. You're busy. You're a professional. Maybe you're a pharmacist, and you know you're capable of doing more, doing much more, and living a more organized, less stressful, purposeful, and freedom-driven life. Let's talk. Let's share. And let's grow together as an industry, as healthcare providers, and as a better unified community. It may seem like some of these things don't easily fit together. After all, what do career coaching, marketing strategy, networking, and pharmacy have in common? Welcome to the RX Buzz. Your host is a pharmacist, a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur, and a proven motivational career coach, Ashlee Klenven Hayes. This is the RX Buzz Podcast, a collaboration between RxAshlee and the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Hey there, RxAshlee listeners. This is Ashlee from the RX Buzz Pharmacy Podcast Network, and I have someone here who, honestly, I've been waiting a long, long time to get him on our podcast because I have so many questions for this guy. Will Soliman is joining us here today on our podcast, so please welcome him. Welcome to my show, Will.
Thank you so much, Ashlee. Pleasure to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good conversation because I have just a lot of questions in terms of your expertise and who I can start sending your way, because a ton of people are trying to do the things that you are a pro expert at. So tell us a little bit about what you do and break down your passions and kind of where you are in your career.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks for having me here. So the pharmaceutical industry, as you know, is an industry that plays a really important role in generating education and information, delivering research to the medical and scientific community. Matter of fact, over 65% of research in the world is generated by the pharmaceutical industry. So the industry plays a really, really important role in advancing medicine. But believe it or not, up until a few years ago, there was no real professionalization of those individuals that actually were educating physicians and that were doing research with physicians at hospitals and academic centers. That's until really our organization came along. So what I currently do, I am the president and the founder of the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs. And what we do is provide training and professional certification for both pharmaceutical sales representatives and medical science liaisons, medical affairs professionals in the pharmaceutical industry.
This is just, I have so many questions for you, Will. First and foremost, how did you get into this role? Like, how did you create such an amazing program?
It's a great question. So first, in terms of how this happened, so if you look at my background, I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry for about 20 years, and I've been really blessed and fortunate to have a lot of amazing experiences. And at one particular company that I worked for, I was their medical director, and I was tasked with really developing a clinical study for patients with this particular disease. And what I realized was physicians out in the community were using our drug in combination with another drug that had been on the market for some time. Yet, there was no safety data on the use of the two drugs in combination, which really blew me away. And here's a situation where you have thousands of patients that are using these drugs in combination, and the pharmaceutical company hadn't yet thought about doing a study that looked at the safety profile of these two drugs, which is a problem. And it really, kind of a light bulb went off on two things. One was sometimes the industry is disconnected from the needs of healthcare providers. But two, when I kind of talked to my partners and colleagues in clinical development and medical affairs, they weren't sure how to design the study, which blew me away. So you have a bunch of physicians, pharmacists, PhDs, very smart people. But what I realized was just because we had those credentials didn't mean that we were actually prepared to work in the industry. And actually, the ACMA, the Accreditation Council for Medical Affairs, we conducted a study. The study was actually published or presented rather at ACCP a few months ago, and we asked pharmacists, were you really prepared, or are you prepared based on your education in the pharmacy schools to work in the pharmaceutical industry? And almost 90% said no. We weren't really trained adequately to work in the pharmaceutical industry. So what I realized was there was a huge, huge need to provide really a career path and train individuals who are going to work in the pharmaceutical industry. As you know, pharmacists, physicians, we're trained on the disease state. We know how to manage patients. We understand the pharmacology, right? We understand the pharmacokinetics. We understand the underlying science and pathology of the disease. But working in the pharmaceutical industry really requires a strong knowledge and understanding of many different functions. And these are things that we train and certify on at the ACMA.
So can you explain to me what are the many different functions? Because here, use me as an educator. I've never had experience specifically in pharma. I know about marketing. I know about, developing research and design, but I've never had experience. So educate me on what specifically there is out there that I need to know if I would be interested in going into pharma.
Absolutely. So there's a few different domains. That's probably the best way to think of them. One domain is really around the regulatory and compliance dimension of working in the pharmaceutical industry. And by the way, when I say pharmaceutical industry, I'm also including in here medical device, diagnostics industry, biotech industry. It's kind of all included, if you will, in the life sciences industry.
Okay. So that's like an umbrella, life sciences, and then pharma is just one of them.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly. Because as you know, today, there's been a big advancement and evolution, especially in the area of medical technology, right? Where we're using personalized medicine, et cetera.
Sure.
So regulatory compliance is one area. So really understanding, how does a drug get approved in America? How does that happen? What do I need for that drug to get approved? What are the different phases of research that are involved, and what are the requirements from a regulatory standpoint? Who are the regulatory bodies involved in that? And once I get the drug approved, what are the rules and kind of the sanctions around how I promote the drug? So this is all the regulatory compliance aspect. Then you have the interaction with healthcare providers. Again, what are the rules and regulations around that? So we cover all of that. And we do it, again, from the perspective of a medical affairs professional in the case of the program that trains and certifies medical affairs professionals. That's the board certified medical affairs specialist program. Now it's become known as the DCMS program.
Got it.
The other aspect is really around the technical competencies. How do I design a clinical trial? How do I do that? You know, if like the example I gave you where, you've got to do a safety profile on 2 drugs never been done before. What are the outcomes I should look for? What kind of study should I put together? How long should I follow the patients? What should be the inclusion-exclusion criteria? I really need to understand biostatistics. So we cover clinical statistics, biostatistics. I need to understand pricing models. So we cover health economic outcomes research and in general pharmacoeconomics. We cover clinical operations. What are good clinical practice and standards? We cover publication planning. So things like, when I publish data, what are the rules around that? When I choose authors to be involved and collaborate with me in the company, if they're outside external key thought leaders in medicine, what's involved with that? How do I put together an advisory board? So the list goes on and on and on. And in the BCMS program in particular, it's 20 modules. And, from my perspective, it's the most comprehensive training and certification program in the world for pharma professionals. To date, we have professionals trained in about 30 countries around the world, which is something I'm really proud of because, as you can imagine, the regulatory compliance aspect for individuals working in Latin America is different than people working in China or US. And we actually account for all that. We have technology that can actually account for and adjust accordingly the content based on where the user is located geographically.
Awesome. Okay, so regulatory interaction, like how to communicate with prescribers, and then the technical skills. So say I'm a pharmacist or a physician working with direct patient care, and I'm thinking about considering a switch to life sciences. Where would I figure out where I belong? Like which 3 entities? Where do I even start? Like, do I just take the certification and that's kind of where you start? Or say I have an interest in regulatory. What does that look like in terms of my next steps?
Great question. What's nice about the DCMS program is that it's a very broad skill set of training. So if you are a pharmacist and you want to work in medical affairs, regulatory affairs, clinical development, any of these areas, the DCMS program will adequately prepare you. And that was really the idea and design behind the program. It also covers things like devices, diagnostics, etc. Because as you can imagine, and you know this better than anyone, right? You graduate as a pharmacist, you're not really sure where you're going to end up. You think you might work in clinical practice or you might work in retail pharmacy, but you're not really sure. Things happen along the way. You learn about new opportunities. And as opportunities present themselves, you really need to have the skills necessary to be successful in those particular roles. Same thing of folks that go into the pharmaceutical industry. You might start out working as a medical science liaison, or you might start out in medical information or drug information. And you might find after a few years you want to move into regulatory affairs. You want to move into clinical, or you came from clinical and want to go to medical, etc. So the idea behind the program is that once you're board certified, you really have the foundation you need to navigate into all these different roles. And you'll be able to do so, I believe, in a seamless way, because it's designed to be very applicable to any of those roles in industry.
Okay, well, now that you've sold me that everyone needs to get a certification, my question to you is, once someone does get a certification, what's their next step? So I have this desire to go into industry, and then I decide to go get the certification through ACMA. Then what?
It's a great question. So believe it or not, the majority of people that actually are board certified in medical affairs through the ACMA work in the industry. So once they've gotten their board certification, they a lot of times will use it to accelerate their career. If they're individuals that don't have any experience in the industry, they of course will utilize the board certification to help them gain more career opportunities. What's nice about what we do at the ACMA is we work with recruiters in the industry. So we work with recruiters who actually prefer board certified candidates. So the idea is really that if you have candidates that you're going to present to an organization, why not make sure that they're individuals that are up a notch, meaning that they have this board certification, they have these skills, this knowledge that's necessary. You presume that they're going to be more effective in their roles, they're going to be more knowledgeable, there's going to be less that you might need to train them on versus individuals that may not have that type of experience or training. So that's kind of one aspect. The other aspect of it is that once you get the board certification, you're also part of a community. And the ACMA Society is really a community and a network of professionals in the pharmaceutical industry. Matter of fact, one of the things that I'm really proud of at the ACMA, we have a phenomenal board of governors. It's a board really made up of, really well-known leaders in the pharmaceutical industry, folks that were former CEOs of pharmaceutical companies, folks that are on the board of several pharmaceutical companies. And really what that tells you is we have a vast network and a strong network and relationships with several pharmaceutical companies that individuals that are part of our society, part of our world can leverage. And that means a lot. I'm sure you know better than anyone, having a strong network is a very, very important component to advancing your career, right? We can't do anything alone.
Preach. I get it. Okay, so now that you've sold me that everyone needs to get this certification, seriously, now I'm going to send all my clients to you because I get probably 10 to 15 people at minimum reaching out to me every week saying, I'm trying to break into pharma. What do I do? And there's only so much coaching I can do for them because ultimately a lot of times they got to get out and hustle themselves and do the networking. So right. Kind of with that focus, why do you think so many pharmacists are trying to transition into industry?
That's a really good question.
Healthcare professionals, not just pharmacists. I mean, I'm talking about nurses, PhDs, all types of different prescribers, physicians. Do you think this is non-traditional healthcare, or is this just becoming the new traditional healthcare setting?
Yeah, this is a really hot question and one that I get all
I'm just going to bring up every single thing that no one else is talking about because I need some answers.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you're asking these questions. So if you look at, we'll just take pharmacists as an example, and we can talk in general about healthcare professionals. But if you look at pharmacists, over the last decade, the number of pharmacists in the United States has more than doubled. Number of pharmacists graduating in the United States. So what's happened is there's so many more pharmacists coming to the market, and I hear all the time from pharmacists that, you know, there aren't as many opportunities available as there might have been years ago. So I think one aspect of it on the pharmacist side is a little bit of a saturation in the market. On the other side, with physicians, NPs, nurse practitioners, PAs, PhDs, they really are looking for opportunities where they can utilize a broader set of skills. And I also think on the physician side in particular, one of the things that's happened as healthcare has evolved, it's become more administrative. There's a much larger administrative burden. I just was talking to a neurologist the other day who, you know, met me at a conference and said, you know, I'm really interested in going to the pharmaceutical industry. I want to get board certified. And I asked why. You know, why are you interested in leaving clinical practice? And basically, they said to me, there's just so much administrative responsibility. It's become more about the administrative responsibilities and really me having to prove why I treated a patient a certain way, why I prescribed this drug. It's become more about that and less about the art of medicine.
Yep.
And I feel like in the industry, I can make an impact on a larger scale. And I think in general, you know, if you go into pharmacy, you go into medicine, you go in it with the idea that you want to impact patients. And what's nice about the industry is you get to do that, and you get a diverse, you know, array of roles that you may not get maybe, you know, in a quote unquote more of a traditional setting. And I can tell you in the last 10 years, I've seen a massive increase in the number of physicians in particular that have went into the pharmaceutical industry. It's been unbelievable.
Well, I'll tell you a personal story. So this morning, I don't know if you know, my husband's a physician. He's an orthopedic surgeon. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, he just finished fellowship. He's now an attending. So, you know, we're living that attending life now, which has been a huge transition for us. But he's in private practice. And it's just so funny. I feel like you were maybe listening to our conversation this morning because he's now in the real community world. And he's seeing the qualms and all of the issues as in administrative work that he has to do. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He just wants to treat people. He just wants to fix bones. Seriously. That's what Chris wants to do. But he spends majority of his time navigating the path and the system and how to really help patients set them up for success. But it's getting through all the insurance barriers. So talk to me in 10 years and maybe Chris will be taking your your board certification. I really don't know if that's happening, but maybe, because it's true, but similar to pharmacists. Pharmacists are kind of getting down to, they want to get back to why they went into it. It's getting more impact. And I think that this is a great outlet for them. I think what you said in the beginning of this show, we just don't have the tools, the training. And I think for schools, so for some schools, I can't speak to all schools, but a school like my school where I came from, USC, School of Pharmacy on the West Coast, University of Southern California, we do a great job at helping students get into the fellowship track, but that's because we live in this arena. We live out here and we've been around forever. But schools, I was talking to a student a couple weeks ago in the Midwest who just aren't surrounded by industry. They don't have access to some of the things that you're teaching. So I just think that what you're doing is just from a standpoint of where I envision pharmacy, I just love it. I love what you're doing. Now, I got to ask you. So a lot of people come to me and their resumes look amazing. They have 16 different certifications, literally, like, okay, maybe not 16, maybe 6 certifications. Maybe, you know, they volunteer, they do the organizations, they go to the conferences, they go to the workshops, they go to the seminars, but yet they're still not landing the jobs. So how can I help them be a better, I don't know, mentor or coach or like director, and how they can really strategically align their vision with getting them on the right path? to something like industry.
Hey, Pharmacy Podcast Nation, here's a quick message from our sponsors supporting the PPN, QD.
If you or your patients struggle with muscle cramps, spasms, soreness, or restless leg syndrome, you're going to want to hear about our non-opioid TheraWorks Relief. TheraWorks Relief is a clinically proven and published locally acting topical solution that prevents and relieves muscle cramps, spasms, and soreness in the legs and feet. In a research study including patients diagnosed with restless leg syndrome, TheraWorks Relief was shown to reduce symptoms commonly associated with accompanying RLS, including muscle cramps and spasms. Muscle cramps are reported as a side effect of hundreds of prescription medications, from intravenous iron sucrose and conjugated estrogens to statins and diuretics. By managing muscle cramps, TheraWorks Relief supports adherence, helping patients stay on important and often life-saving medications. TheraWorks Relief comes in an easy-to-use, fast-absorbing, non-greasy foam that can prevent muscle cramps and spasms with just a few simple applications a day. To learn more about TheraWorks Relief, go to theraworksrelief.com and click on the healthcare professional link.
I think that's a great question. I think, what people a lot of times don't realize is that you can have the best resume possible, and then you do your interview, your first initial interview, and then it's a flop. Because in the end of the day, right, you've got to be able to tell your story in a very articulate way. You've got to be able to sell yourself in a lot of ways. And a lot of people were never really taught how to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are very good technically. A lot of people, like I said, can get something down on paper, but really being able to tell your story in a way that engages the employer or the interviewer is absolutely critical. And so I think having some type of program that can teach people how to do that, I think would be phenomenal. And I think especially for folks that are in healthcare and life sciences, it's not a skill we generally learn about. I did my PhD at Columbia University, and there was nothing about, those types of skills. I mean, you might be able to catch a seminar here and there, but nothing really to teach me how do I really get up, either if I'm presenting formally, or how do I, in an interview setting, really tell my story and engage people and get them to see why they should hire me. I mean, that is it. That's the critical component, right? Because once someone's interviewed you, if you've gotten to the interview stage, that means that you have on paper the core skills. They think you have the potential. Now, if they don't hire you and after they've interviewed you, what that really means most of the time, not all the time, most of the time, is that probably there wasn't that connection, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know where the statistic comes from, but I think, there's something I read once where people will judge you like in the first 20 seconds just based on the nonverbal cues. Yeah. So I think that's absolutely, you think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, that's so important.
So I have pharmacists that are reaching out to me, and I'm asking these questions not because they're leading questions, because it's seriously happening to me on a daily basis now. There's a ton of people who want to be MSLs or medical writers or medical communication experts, and I can coach them to get them on the right path. But ultimately, how do I help them? How do I help them? We've kind of alluded to, but two, why do so many pharmacists want to go into this? I'm just curious. Is this the only thing for them too? Or are we just hearing these things maybe on different social media platforms that this is the best route?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I want to say, I want to, commend you for what you're doing. I think it's really, really, really important what you're doing.
I didn't pay Will to say this to me. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, no, she didn't pay me, but no, I think what you're doing is important. I really think it's an important service. In terms of why they're going into it, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one, like I said, in terms of being able to use the other type, parts of your personality, whether you like dealing with people and not so much selling, but educating and training. Pharmacists, that I talk to love being out there and talking to physicians and folks in the healthcare community, sometimes, working with patient advocate organizations. They like the interaction of working with people in different ways. There's diversity in the role. It's not a type of role that's monotonous, which I think a lot of people coming from retail find. I think also the work-life balance. remember, a lot of the roles, especially the medical science liaison roles, these are positions where you're working from home. These are remote-based positions. And if you think about it, starting salary for a medical science liaison or MSL for a pharmacist is about $130,000, $140,000. Plus they get a company car, they're getting equity, they're getting stock options, they get a bonus. So they have work-life balance, they're getting compensation that's probably very competitive, much higher than what they might have been getting before. And people want that. People want that type of lifestyle. Now, the negative that, people don't want is the travel. And for some people like the travel. Some people don't. It just depends on your personal situation and preferences. But then you're also getting the opportunity to really grow and develop. I met a pharmacist the other day who started out in retail. Now she is the head of 200 people at Celgene. She manages 200 people at Celgene. And she was telling me, you know what, if I just stayed in pharmacy, I probably may not have gotten those types of opportunities. And she's working remotely. The company allows her to work remotely. Mm-hmm. She's managing 200 people. That's a great opportunity. It's phenomenal, and she loves what she does.
So I have another question for you just as we're talking. So students, I think, have a little bit more, whether they believe it or not, have a little bit more of an advantage to get into the industry track because they have fellowship opportunities. And I guess anyone has the access to apply to a fellowship. For people who are working maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years, who are looking for a career pivot, maybe thinking about the pharmaceutical industry, what do you think the best route for them to go down is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think getting a fellowship is, of course, if you can land one, that's great. I think the challenge is that there aren't that many fellowships available. From what I've heard, it's very, very competitive. And so, outside of landing a fellowship, I think doing some type of professional development and certification to really hone your skills, differentiate yourself, I think that's important. I think being part of a community that's connected within the industry to pharma, to biotech, I think that's important, and really understanding who the main players are, the decision makers. I think also learning about where the opportunities are going to be. So, for example, if you're going to work in the pharmaceutical industry and, you're maybe agnostic to which therapeutic area you'll work in, really understanding, okay, which drugs are in development and which companies are developing those drugs and where are those opportunities? Because if they're developing products and those products look like they're going to be approved, they're going to probably need medical affairs team. If they're going to need a medical affairs team, they're going to be hiring pharmacists. So I think, being in the know, being aware, so being part of these communities online like ACMA, like others, that can kind of help connect you to that world. Because that's really what it's about, right? It's really connecting to that community. And then once you're in that community, understanding, from there where the opportunities are. Finding a mentor. One of the things that we do for people that enroll in the board certified medical affairs specialist program, everyone has the opportunity to ask for a mentor in the industry. So you get a mentor. So I think between getting a mentor, being part of the ACMA career database, linking with a recruiter, it really, I believe, sets you up for success.
Agreed. Okay, so I have to ask you, who do you see coming out of your program being the most successful?
You mean a specific individual?
Sorry, not specific individual. So what I'm trying to ask is, what type of person that goes through the program and gets the certification ultimately ends up getting kind of their dream jobs? Like, what is that personality type and what is different about them versus someone who maybe didn't get the certification and is trying to navigate the path on their own? Like, what is it about the most successful people that you meet? And why do you think that they've been successful through your program?
Okay. I love that you asked this question, because I'm going to tell you a story about one of the graduates that we had. And I think it boils down really to, and you might have heard Angela Duckworth do this TED Talk on grit. I don't know if you've heard it. It's got a lot of, it's got a lot of play. So you've heard it. It sounds like, but I think what it boils down to really is we get, as you know, we have 4,000 people registered with the ACMA, like I said, in 30 countries. A lot of people get the certification, just like a lot of people get a degree, right? You have a lot of people that get degrees from very good schools. Some are successful, some are not, right? They have the raw talent maybe, but what is that key to success that drives some people to really be successful and see it materialize, while others, it doesn't happen.
Right.
And I agree with Angela. I think it's really about persistence and grit. And I think it's, individuals that do the board certification, but they don't stop it. They do the board certification. They take advantages of the things that are offered by the ACMA, and they really push and try. Right. And are persistent, and they don't give up. And I think it's something we hear as kids, right? You never give up. Don't give up. But, it's a principle as adults we forget sometimes. It amazes me how many adults that go through our program, or just, folks that I've talked to in general, that'll do the board certification and then maybe not do much after. They kind of rest on their laurels. I think in general, whether you're getting a board certification, whether you're getting a PhD or a PharmD or whatever you're getting, and trying to accomplish, grit is really important, and persistence is important, and understanding that you need to make sustained efforts for an extended period of time to be able to see results. Because if you don't, and you don't follow through, it's going to be difficult for you to really achieve what you set out to do. And one story I'll say is a gentleman who came from India. He was a PhD, had no experience in the industry. This was about 3 years ago. Did the board certification in medical affairs. And in 3 years, this individual now is actually not just an MSL, he is managing an MSL team. And he sent us an email and said, you know what, doing the board certification was one of the best things I ever did. And I asked him why, what did you get out of it? What did you feel like that was the most benefit, was most beneficial to you? And he said it was really about getting kind of a panoramic view of the industry, understanding how all the pieces came together. So when I was able to land the role, I found that I really understood how to navigate and be successful in working with KOLs or key opinion leaders. And that led him to become recognized in this company, and they promoted him.
Love it.
I mean, phenomenal story. I love that story because this guy had no experience, and bam, in 3 years, he was able to demonstrate that. So, and I think why? I think he was hungry.
Yeah.
He was hungry. He wanted that, and that's what it takes.
I agree. So now that we know why and who should come after this type of certification, I'm assuming it's people who are trying to break into the space and trying to just learn more and how to navigate the life sciences arena. Is that accurate?
Yeah, like I said, I think about a third are in that category, and about 2/3 are individuals already in the industry.
I was going to ask you. Yeah. I was going to ask you, so who, maybe on the flip side, who's probably not a good fit for this certification?
If for the board certification in medical affairs, if you're interested in going, for example, in R&D, if you're interested in going into business development or marketing, those would be areas board certification wouldn't help you. But if you're interested in going into medical affairs, clinical development, regulatory affairs, this is where this type of certification can help. And I think it could be, again, a tremendous value.
But it could be a start for people who are looking to get into other arenas, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, this has made my day, made my week. I have a ton more questions for you, but honestly, just knowing kind of that there is this resource for people is extremely helpful for me and personally, but also just for the audience to know that there is support there.
Absolutely. I mean, we get calls all the time from folks that sometimes just want to learn about, the opportunities in medical affairs. And I would encourage everyone to go to our website, which is medicalaffairsspecialist.org. You can look at all the resources there, all the information on medical affairs. You can follow us on social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. There's tons of, resources. You can also connect with individuals that are part of the ACMA, and they can really help navigate you in terms of determining whether the board certification makes sense, and really just understanding the opportunities available to you. And if you're in the industry, again, this is something that I think can really help accelerate your career. One of the things that I'm really excited about is the ACMA has actually been recognized. So this year, we won the Global Health Sciences Life Sciences Training Award for 2018 as the best trainer in life sciences. It's something that I'm really proud of, and I think it's a testament to all the effort that's been made over the last year and really taking our program up a notch. The other thing, too, about the ACMA is our program, the DCMS program, through our partnership with Scientia CME, you can earn CME credits. So
that's good.
CME ACP, yes. If you're a pharmacist, you earn credits. If you're a physician, you earn credits, which I think is great. It's another value, another reason to do the program. You kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Will, so you kind of convinced me. Now I kind of want to take the board certification just to take it. Just to take it, because this is an area of pharmacy that I'm exposed to, but I don't have, the real firsthand direct experience with it. So I think
I'll leave you with one last statistic. This area of the industry, medical affairs, it's grown 300%. 300% in the last 10 years.
What does that even mean? I mean, how can we get a bite of it? Like, are you telling me that I need to be in there? Are you telling the audience that that's where we need to be? Is that where healthcare is heading, or what?
I think so. I think what's happening is physicians, the medical community, they want information from other peers, like pharmacists, like other physicians. And I think it'll continue to grow. But that means that in the last 10 years, we've seen a 300% increase in the number of people within medical affairs, meaning, companies were starting at X, and now, 10 years later, they've increased massively in terms of how much they've invested, resources, how many people are there. And we've also seen that the number of drugs that are more related to specialized, like rare orphan disease type drugs in the FDA is skyrocketed. Yes. You know what that means, right? That means that companies are going to rely more and more on people with specialized training, aka PhDs, PharmDs, MDs, etc.
Okay, so this has been the best one of the best conversations I've had in forever. So thank you for joining us. Now, I guess for the audience, if you're interested in you've already kind of said how to reach out to you, but if you're interested in a medical affairs opportunity or learning experience, or you're trying to just, think about next steps, or, you're burnt out and you're not feeling it in your current career, these are opportunities for you. Right here. We're laying the groundwork for you. You have to simply invest in yourself and invest in the process. It's not like William is going to show up at your front door. I mean, you might see him on LinkedIn, you might see him on social media, but you have to go out and get it. You have to invest in the process. You can't just simply apply endlessly without putting in the energy and the thought and the strategy and the accountability behind it. So I hope that this message resonated with you guys. It's not just about a sales pitch about you need to get a certification. It's not that. These are strategies and specific mechanisms and tools on how you can actually career pivot. This is one way. This is not the only way, but this is just one way. So I'm glad that you guys chimed in today. Thanks again, William, for joining us. Today was awesome. I love what you're doing. Happy to support you in any way possible. And it just so happens that I'm really good friends with William's wife, Susie Soliman. So we'll have Susie on the show here in the next couple weeks. And Will, again, it was fun talking with you. Thanks again for being a guest on our show.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Of course.
This was just the beginning. If this was your first time listening to the RX Buzz, we welcome you and thank you for giving us a chance. And if you're an old friend, one of our subscribers, we cherish you and look forward to hearing from you. And now, we need your help. We ask that you share this podcast with just one person you know who's in the healthcare industry. If this podcast can help just one person, we believe it will have a chain reaction, having an impact on dozens, hundreds, thousands, and someday, millions of people. Thank you for your help. We truly appreciate you. And thank you for listening to the RX Buzz, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network.